This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Go to the link in the description to get started on a 2-month free trial. Trilogies. We all love them. There's something special about them. And it's always kind of fun to see if all 3 movies are going to end up great, if the series starts great and ends poorly, or if it starts poorly and ends great. I wanted to go back to the late 2000s, early 2010s, and revisit a trilogy I hold very dear to my heart, and that's the Dark Knight trilogy. The 3rd film in the trilogy is The Dark Knight Rises, and not enough people talk about this movie in my opinion. There's so much the movie does right, but internet discourse talks about it as if it's a mediocre mess. But it's not, and I can prove it. The most important elements of the movie have to do with its writing, its themes. Now before we get started on the video, I wanted to let you all know that if you are interested in becoming a writer or filmmaker, there's one place that you have to check out, and that's Skillshare. Skillshare? That's right, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes covering dozens of creative and entrepreneurial skills. Are you someone that wants to learn how to color grade your footage or write screenplays? That's me. Well, you're in luck because Skillshare offers all of that and more. Getting a premium membership gives you unlimited access so you can join the classes and communities that benefit you like illustration, graphic design, photography, creative writing, animation, fine art, music and music production, film and video, you name it. This class, for example, by Ryan Booth will help you learn how to make your footage look more professional by giving you tips on when to film, certain lighting conditions you have to take into consideration when filming, and more. You want to make your movies look like Christopher Nolan movies? Skillshare is the place to go. Lastly, Skillshare is insanely affordable with an annual subscription being less than $10 a month. Skillshare is sponsoring this video and they're providing you Chads with 2 months of Skillshare for free. That's genuinely a really awesome deal. 2 months free? I'm signing up right now. That's right, go to the link in the description to get 2 months of Skillshare absolutely free. This is genuinely an awesome deal, guys. I used my own code.
Batman flew into movie theaters across this nation and made box office history.
The Batman saga took in $75.6 million in its 2nd weekend in theaters.
The performance of a fallen star reached an all-out crescendo.
We can't talk about The Dark Knight Rises without talking about The Dark Knight first, which is a quintessential superhero film that strives to be more than just that. A superhero film. It's the difference between an Ant-Man 2 and a Spider-Man 2. One strives to be more than what it's usually labeled. The Dark Knight showcases an interpretation of the Batman and Joker in a riveting crime drama that is one of my favorite films of all time. And you can personally dislike the film, but you can't refute that the movie had major cultural impact. And also the movie's great and you're wrong. But being such a massive success and changing the landscape of superhero films for a while, The Dark Knight Rises had to compete with that. Batman had to compete with Batman, and to do that is near impossible as one movie had one of the greatest performances in a superhero film ever. And so, of course, almost unsurprisingly, the reception to The Dark Knight Rises was not as good as the reception to The Dark Knight, and because of not being as good, people brush it off. If The Dark Knight Rises did not come after The Dark Knight, I feel like viewers would treat the film differently. But just because the film isn't as good as The Dark Knight doesn't mean we should brush it aside as an inferior sequel. While The Dark Knight was a crime drama, The Dark Knight Rises is essentially a war movie with some post-apocalyptic undertones. Batman is also not in the movie as much as one would expect, as most of the time he is struggling to return to the hero he once was. The movie's a near 3-hour-long epic which takes its time. It builds up momentum little by little, showing glimpses of what the antagonist and his cohorts are planning by separating these stories until they all eventually coincide when Gotham falls under terrorist attack. But at its core, it's a character study. It's about a broken man who welcomes death because he has nothing left to lose. The film blends everything Nolan's good at, from characters to grand set pieces to a plot with a bit of a twist, and whether or not he executed this smoothly is up to you. I'm just here to inform you that the movie is a lot better than what everyone's been saying.
You don't owe these people anymore. You've given them everything.
Not everything. Not yet.
In the film, Bruce Wayne hasn't been Batman for 8 years, but not just that, he hasn't even left his house in 8 years.
I heard he never leaves the East Wing. You know, I heard he had an accident. Yeah, that he's disfigured.
A shut-in NEET, Bruce Wayne has isolated himself from the world, a world that has forgotten him, and has demonized the hero he once was due to a lie to aid the city in its fight against corruption and crime, with Harvey Dent becoming a martyr. And surprisingly, it's working, but a lie can only stay hidden for so long, and Bruce knows this, Gordon knows this, and eventually the lie catches up to both of them in the form of Bane, fully knowing exactly what's been going on in Gotham.
We pick up Bruce Wayne 8 years after the events of The Dark Knight. And the reason for that passage of time is we wanted to really look at the consequences of the actions that he and Commissioner Gordon took at the end of The Dark Knight, and for their sacrifice to have meaning, it has to have been successful. And so at least superficially, we're dealing with a Gotham that doesn't need Batman anymore. On the surface of things, looks much better. And so you've got a Bruce Wayne who has locked himself away in self-imposed isolation in a wing of Wayne Manor, much in the manner of Howard Hughes in his Las Vegas period. And really our story picks up with the idea of this is a guy who's, as Alfred said, hung up his cape and his cowl, but he hasn't moved on. He's sort of stuck in this moment in time, or this emotional phase of his life.
Bruce is told by Alfred from the very beginning of the film that he's essentially suicidal, even though Bruce opposes that fact. Having lost Rachel, the woman he loved, someone he wanted to spend the rest of his life with in the last film, he acts like someone who has no reason to live. In the film, we're told that crime is at an all-time low, and that means Batman isn't even needed. Bruce only becomes Batman again when a new threat emerges, doing so out of duty, out of responsibility. He essentially leaves his house because John Blake tells him that funds are not being sent over to a boys' home. He leaves not necessarily because he wants to, and when he is Batman for the first half of the film, he is on a mission to defeat Bane, fully understanding that doing so without proper preparation will cost him his life. Being Batman is all Bruce has left.
I did find someone.
I know, and you lost them, but that's all part of living, sir. But you're not living, you're just waiting, hoping for things to go bad again.
It's all about Bruce's journey towards discovering the value of life by fearing death. That's what the movie is all about, and it's incredibly intimate. Character building moments are usually quiet and thought-provoking. There aren't really comedic punchlines in the film, everything is delivered with nuance and maximum impact so the viewer confronts the emotional struggle the characters are dealing with head-on.
Did they kill him?
I'm not sure.
Batman is a symbol, but what about Bruce Wayne? Will he die because of Batman? If he chose to accept death, he would become a self-sacrificing character like Bane and would die for his cause. That's why Bane and his League of Shadows, or technically Talia and her League of Shadows, are the perfect antagonist to Batman in this film. While Joker in The Dark Knight was the opposite of Batman, Bane is almost the same as Batman, completely blinded by a belief, a crusade that they believe to be morally righteous, one they're willing to die for.
No! They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother.
Have we started the fire?
Yes. The fire rises.
And that's what separates Batman from Bane ultimately. Will Bruce Wayne die for his city as well? Not just Batman.
When it is done, and Gotham is ashes, then you have my permission to die.
We don't talk about Bane enough. If there's a villain that should get talked about more, it's this guy. Incredibly imposing, with a creepy mask and a weird-ass voice that you can't even understand unless you have subtitles on, Bane feels like a force of nature, a malevolent entity that steals every single scene he's in. He doesn't even have to do anything. He just has to stand there.
Well, I think one of the most interesting things about Batman, Bruce Wayne and Batman, is you're looking at a guy who, particularly as Christian Bale has portrayed it, I find it a very moving struggle. It's a guy who has suffered this terrible trauma as a child, and he's filled with negative things. He's filled with anger and rage, a desire for revenge, but he has this very moving struggle to try and do something positive with that, to try and make something good from that. And so any time you can put him up against a threat, I think it's so much more interesting if the threat is not just to the safety and prosperity of the people of Gotham, but also a threat to his own philosophy, his own way of life, something that gets under his skin and in some way represents a path he could have taken.
At a certain point in the movie, John Daggett, played by Ben Mendelsohn, has no control over the plot, and it's Bane that's been using Daggett. There's no "it was me all along" moment. All Bane does is essentially invade Daggett's space and caress his face, almost as if consoling a child. while at the same time preparing him for the inevitable outcome.
Of Gotham's reckoning, here to end the borrowed time you've all been living on.
To truly understand how absolutely terrifying this character is, the film starts by introducing him and his resources, similar to the Joker in The Dark Knight. Most interesting about Bane is that he seems to have a messiah complex to me, believing himself to be the one who can truly cause the destruction of Gotham, further honoring Ra's al Ghul's destiny.
I am the League of Shadows. I am here to fulfill Ra's al Ghul's destiny.
He wants to see Gotham burn, and he also wants Batman to be torn down and burn along with it. Knowing full well that Bruce Wayne is Batman and he's someone that does not fear dying, he decides to torture him by making him watch the one thing he cares about crumble to pieces, his city. It's here where Bane is wrong, because he believes that Bruce Wayne is Batman, but doesn't understand that Batman is an idea. It's meant to represent the fight for justice and doing what's right, a symbol of what heroes should be. At the start of the film, while Batman hasn't been seen for years, people in the streets believe Batman to be a guardian angel gone missing, while the police demonize him. It's through the events of the movie that people, and especially the police, begin to realize that Batman is a hero, again, a symbol of justice, and decide to take back their city. They even use his bat symbol during their reconnaissance missions, and eventually when Bruce Wayne returns to Gotham, the physical embodiment of the Batman symbol, he lights up his logo on the bridge, and immediately, if you have a job, a duty, you know what's required of you. Batman is telling you it's time to fight. It's time to go to war.
This blocks the remote detonator signal to the bomb. Get it onto it before sunrise. They might hit the button when it starts.
When what starts?
War.
Batman symbolizing the fight for justice affects mostly two characters in the film, one being Peter Foley, and the other being Selina Kyle, Catwoman. Not that Catwoman. This Catwoman. Let's focus on Selina Kyle here. Her goal in the film is that she wants to escape her life of crime and start anew by using this device called the Clean Slate to wipe away her criminal past. She also starts the movie believing that what Bane is doing is justice, but eventually begins to realize that the somewhat totalitarian state that Gotham has become, ruled by the insane, is not what justice truly is. She believes Gotham to be under this aristocratic rule at the start of the film and steals from the rich, but eventually comes to realize that Bane's goal is not the same as her goal, and for the rest of the movie, she just wants to leave. She also sees a bit of herself in Bruce and also wishes him to leave Gotham. And in the end, it's a decision Selina Kyle has to face, whether she's gonna stand up for the helpless of Gotham again but fight for true justice this time, or will she run away to freedom? And her desire to live a normal life also has some influence on Bruce, as at the end of the film, he leaves to Italy with her, knowing that Batman has truly solidified itself as a symbol, and that it will live on, inspiring Gotham citizens to do some good. But how does that happen? How does Bruce get to this point?
Bruce. Why do we fall?
Bruce must climb out of the pit of death. Bruce for the entire movie has been falling and can't get up.
I've fallen and I can't get up!
Now the pit is hell on earth, a place where no one can escape. To stay is to accept death, but Bruce wants to escape, and to do so he has to climb out of the pit without a rope, and find the fear he's been lacking, find his will to survive and overcome this obstacle completely, not out of his duty to fight for his city, but out of personal desire to fight for his city once more.
I do fear death. I fear dying in here, while my city burns.
Then make the climb. Without the rope.
And thus, the Dark Knight rises. When he reaches Gotham, he has to stop Bane's nuclear bomb from going off, and we get what I keep talking about time and time again, a timer, a countdown, a ticking clock, something used in media to create tension.
Well, I think one of the great uses of time in film noir and crime movies is always the ticking clock, that great tension. It really speaks to the use of time in these kind of films. You really want to try and ratchet things up, and in The Dark Knight Rises, we try and tell a very long time span for this genre. and then we try and really compress it and accelerate it towards the end. So time is very, very elastic in the film.
Batman must make the ultimate sacrifice. The physical embodiment of Batman must be removed for Batman to truly become the representation of heroism. Now, with the figure of Batman being celebrated as a hero, Bruce can go and live on for himself, as the Dark Knight has risen, again, in a whole nother way. And the truth is, I think the film's theme of rising after being beaten is incredibly impactful. It's a message that's told time and time again to rise up after falling down. A message about not giving up, and the film displays what a true hero can be, inspiring. And there's also the theme of death and rebirth. The League of Shadows is reborn with Talia and Bane. Gotham dies to only be reborn better and brighter. And Batman dies, and yet John Blake finds the Batcave, and Batman will live on. The film, like a lot of films, is layered with impossibilities like how did Bruce heal his back so quickly, how do you get back to Gotham? Plot holes like that exist, but having no relevance to the plot in any way, they shouldn't really be considered plot holes, but more so nitpicking. Let's all just use the argument that everyone always uses whenever something like this happens. How did Batman do it? Because he's the goddamn Batman.
Tell me where the trigger is. Then you have my permission to die.
How's it going, chads? Thanks for watching the video. Really appreciate shares and likes and comments and all that fluff. Definitely turn on notifications to get the latest, brownest content from me. And I want to thank my patrons for helping me out every month. I wanted to shout out B-Man Lego Boy for being with me since my Return to Zootopia days. He's a great dude. And I also wanted to shout out Noah Sparks for updating the Browntable theme. Check out his website in the description as well. Thanks for watching, and I hope you come back to the table.